Darlings, come closer. Pull up the comfiest jam, pour yourself something warm, and settle in. Tonight's story is a feast, rich, layered, and served with a twist of sea salt. It's about pride, a yacht that sank like a soufflé in the rain, and the delicious moment I let my in-laws drown in their own assumptions, only to fish them out with my own boat. They thought I was just a waitress. I let them believe it for years, until the Mediterranean itself decided it was time for the truth to surface. Let's begin where every good family drama does, at the wedding. The Harrington estate perched on the cliffs of Dorset like a pearl on a velvet glove. White roses climbed every archway. The string quartet played Vivaldi so softly you could hear the bees humming in the lavender. And my mother-in-law, Priscilla III, mind you, glided through the crowd in a gown that cost more than most people's homes. Pearls the size of mothballs gleamed at her throat, and her smile was sharp enough to slice the wedding cake. I wore a simple cream silk dress bought off the rack in Naples, nothing flashy, but tailored to perfection. She took one look at me, hair swept up, no diamonds, no fuss, and decided I was the help. Not maliciously, just efficiently, like sorting silverware before a banquet. She twirled the flute between her fingers, watching the bubbles rise like tiny lies. I said, I keep people happy. Plates full, glasses topped, smiles wide. She gave a tight little smile, the kind that says, how quaint, without saying a word. My fiancé, Henry, sweet Henry, stood beside me, blushing crimson, terrified I'd spill the truth. I didn't. Truth, I own 3 waterfront bistros along the Amalfi Coast, a fleet of fishing charters that supplied half the restaurants in Sorrento, and a sleek little yacht I called Second Gens. But why ruin the game? Let her picture me in a polyester apron, balancing trays for tips. Henry and I met by chance, a summer evening in Positano, my bistro buzzing with sunburned tourists and locals who knew my name. He wandered in, wind blown from a day on the water, ordered a limoncello spritz, and stayed until the closing. He wasn't like the Harringtons, stiff, starched, obsessed with lineage. He was kind, awkward, with a laugh that made the staff sneak glances. When he proposed a year later, I said yes, but I knew what came with him, a family that measured worth in bank accounts and boat names. I was ready to play the long game. The wedding reception unfolded like a choreographed ballet. Waiters in crisp white jackets wove through the crowd, serving canapes of smoked salmon and caviar. I caught Priscilla watching me, her eyes narrowing as I chatted with a duke's cousin. She leaned to her sister, whispering something that made them both glance my way. I raised my glass to them. Oh, innocence. Henry squeezed my hand under the table, whispering, "You're wicked." I winked, "Only when it's fun." After the wedding, the invitations started arriving like clockwork. Garden parties in Hampshire, charity galas in London, the annual Harrington Regatta off the Isle of Wight. Each event was a stage, and Priscilla played the lead. She'd pat my hand, her diamond rings cold against my skin. "You must feel so out of place among all this," she'd say, her voice dripping with pity. I'd nod sweetly. "Terribly." Inside, I was laughing. My bistros were turning profits that rivaled her husband's shipping ventures. My charters had just secured a contract with a Michelin-starred chef, and on second chance, she'd won the Mediterranean Classic, quietly, under a holding company. The trophy sat in my office, wrapped in a tea towel so the cleaner wouldn't gossip. Honeymoon in Capri. Priscilla insisted we dine at Il Riccio, a cliffside restaurant where the sea sparkled like a sapphire under the moon. She handed me the wine list like it was a pop quiz. "You're used to this, aren't you?" she said, her smile a challenge. I nodded, scanned the list, and ordered a 98 saucy Gaia with the ease of someone ordering tap water. The waiter didn't blink. He'd served me at my own Bistro Impositano the week before. Priscilla's eyes nearly fell into her risotto. She recovered quickly, but later I heard her whisper to Henry, "She's competent." Competent. I just paid the bill with the black card she didn't see. The waiter slipped me the receipt with a wink, and I tucked it into my clutch like a secret. Life with the Harringtons was a masterclass in assumptions. At every gathering, they treated me like a charming oddity, a girl who'd stumbled into their world by sheer luck. Cousin Reginald, whom we called Reggie the Red for his perpetual sunburn, was the worst. He'd corner me mid cocktail hours explaining maritime law or yacht maintenance like I was a schoolgirl. "You'll get the hang of it," he'd say, patting my shoulder. I'd smiled, sipped my gin, and let him talk. I didn't tell him I'd negotiated port fees in 3 languages or that my yacht's engine room was cleaner than his wine cellar. Year 2 brought the big invite, a cruise on the Priscilla Fourth, their 80-foot monstrosity of teak and hubris. I boarded on asphodels and a linen dress, my hair loose and salty from the sea breeze. Priscilla frowned. "No uniform?" she asked, half joking. "Day off," I replied, brushing past her. The cruise was a parade of humblebrags. Reginald droned on about the yacht's horsepower, offering to show me the engine room so I'd understand how things work. I said I'd love a tour. He spent 20 minutes explaining few lines while I mentally calculated burn rates and nodded politely. Lunch on deck was a spectacle. Lobster tails the size of kittens, chilled rosé flowing like a river. Priscilla held court, recounting how she'd once summered with the Agnelli family. I nodded along, refilling her glass. Old habits from my bistro days. She beamed. "See, you're a natural." I nearly choked on an olive, but smiled through it. The first 2 days were smooth, all blue skies and clinking glasses. The Harringtons toasted their own greatness, their voices carrying over the water. I stayed quiet, watching the horizon, feeling the sea's pulse under my feet. I'd always loved the ocean. It never judged, never assumed. It just was. On night 3, the sky turned the color of bruised plums. Night 3, the sky turned the color of bruised plums. Waves slapped the hull like angry neighbors. The captain, a grizzled man with a beard like steel wool, tried to reassure us, but the barometer was plummeting. Then came the jolt, a sound like a giant cracking its knuckles. The Priscilla Fourth had hit a reef.
Water gushed into the lower cabins. Champagne flues flew, shattering against mahogany paneling. Priscilla screamed, "We're sinking!" her voice high and jagged. Reggie clutched a bottle of Dom Perignon like it was a teddy bear, his sunburn glowing in the emergency lights. Guests stumbled, silk dresses soaked, cufflinks lost in the chaos. Henry grabbed my arm, his eyes wide. "Are you okay?" I nodded, already reaching for my raincoat. I was calm, because I knew help was coming. "Yes, Captain Marco, send second chance. Tell them to bring towels and humility." My yacht was moored 2 miles away, just off Porto Servo. Crew of 8, full galley, every inch polished to perfection. I radioed again. "Tell the Harringtons their waitress is coming." The storm roared, but second chance cut through the waves like a blade. We pulled alongside the Priscilla Fourth, her hull listing like a drunk debutante. My crew lowered the tender, smooth, practiced, silent as shadows. I stepped aboard this sinking yacht, raincoat flapping, hair somehow still perfect. Priscilla stood in the saloon, her mascara a crime scene, clutching a life vest like it was haute couture. She gasped, "Wo Vivian, Shivibi," her voice a mix of shock and something like fear. I handed her a towel. "Careful, it's monogrammed." Reggie stared at my yacht, sleek, white, twice the size of theirs. He dropped the dome. The bottle rolled across the deck, fizzing into the floodwater. I smiled. "Don't worry, I know a good server who can clean that." The transfer took 40 minutes. My crew worked like a ballet. Lines secured, guests wrapped in cashmere blankets, hot toddies pressed into shaking hands. Priscilla sat in the saloon of Second Chance, dripping on my teak floors, staring at the crystal sconces and the mahogany bar. "Where? How?" she stammered. I poured her a brandy, the good stuff from my private stock. I said, "Trade secret." I turned to check on the others. Daji kept muttering, "But you said you were a waitress." I smiled wider. I said, "I keep people happy. Tonight, that includes you." We towed the Priscilla Fourth to port under a sky rinsed clean by the storm. The harbour lights twinkled like gossip, bright and knowing. The crew of Second Chance secured the lines, and I stood on deck, watching the Harringtons disembark, soggy, humbled, and very quiet. Priscilla tried to thank me, her voice catching on misunderstandings. I just smiled. Water under the bridge, or over it, in your case. Henry squeezed my hand, his eyes sparkling with pride and a touch of mischief. He'd known the truth all along, but loved the show as much as I did. Christmas that year was different. The Harringtons' usual extravagance felt muted. Priscilla gifted me a silver tray engraved, "To the best waitress we know." I laughed. A real laugh, not the polite one I'd perfected, and thanked her. Now it holds cookies in my bistro, the kind with sea salt caramel, my own recipe. The staff love it. They call it the Priscilla Platter and grin every time they pass it. But the story doesn't end there. 3 months after the rescue, Priscilla called. Her voice trembled, not with her usual confidence, but something softer, almost fragile. "Darling, the Yacht Club is hosting a charity auction. They need a keynote speaker, someone relatable." I could hear the swallow in her throat. "Would you?" I let the silence stretch just long enough to savor it. "Of course," I said. "I'll bring slides."
The night of the auction, I walked on stage at the Yacht Club in a simple navy dress. No pearls, no pretense. Just me. The room was packed. Old money, new money, and a few curious locals who'd heard whispers of the sinking. I told them about the night the sea taught us all a lesson. About assumptions that sink faster than boats. About second chances and the quiet strength of those who serve, whether it's a plate or a lifeline. I spoke of my bistros, built from a single cafe I'd bought with my savings at 22. I mentioned the charters, the yacht, the years of work nobody saw. The room was silent, then erupted in applause. Priscilla stood in the back, eyes shining, clapping harder than anyone. For the first time, she saw me. Reggie found me afterward, his face redder than usual, though not from the sun. He said, "I owe you an apology," shifting on his feet. I patted his cheek. "Buy it around for the crew instead.
they earned it. He did. Every year since, on the anniversary of the sinking, he sends a case of Dom Quignon to my bistros. I serve it to the staff at closing, and we toast to storms, and to the quiet ones who weather them. People often ask if I ever considered telling the Harringtons the truth from the start. Why would I? The reveal was the dessert, the final course of a meal I'd been cooking for years. I let them season their own story with assumptions, and when the time came, I served the truth on a silver platter. Well, a monogrammed towel, at least. It tasted better that way, don't you think? Life with the Harringtons settled after that. Priscilla started inviting me to her book club, though I suspect she just wanted my biscotti recipe. Reggie stopped explaining engines and started asking about my charters. Henry and I bought a second boat, smaller, just for us. We named it Truth's Tide and took it out at dawn, when the sea is quiet and the world feels honest. I still run my bistros, still walk the docks at sunrise, checking lines and tasting the morning's catch. The sea taught me long ago, you don't need to shout your worth. It shows up when it matters. So the moral of this tale? Never correct a fool's story. It makes the truth taste sweeter. Assumptions are like poorly tied knots. They slip under pressure. And when they do, be ready with a boat, a towel, and a smile that says you knew all along. So here's to the storms that sink yachts and the truths that sail through them. Oh, and that second chance seafood chowder. It's got a whisper of saffron, a dash of revenge, and a whole lot of heart. Drop a comment below with your own family tea. I'm all ears and a little bit of mischief.